I knew it. I knew it. I've said this going for like a year. And I finally see the polling on it now that we've gotten into basically the general election since Joe Biden has clinched the nomination at this point. This poll is everything wrong with our politics. Honestly. I would even go so far as to say with our government itself, because it explains how we get stuck into this pattern of voting in this race to the bottom, especially on the Democratic side. Especially on the Democratic side. Yeah, this one poll shows everything wrong with our politics. Welcome. And I need to moderate it, but it's a contradiction. But Joe Biden still wins. Like, in every state, if you look at the various states, Trump is massively disliked, and he's creating a lot of energy for himself, especially in the way that he's handled these various cases, meaning poorly. And so Joe Biden has been polling pretty strong in many of the states, including states that Clinton lost. But when you look into the polling, you get a different feature that explains what I'm talking about. The problem with democratic politics. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. I'm not going to keep this video long because this is something that I've said over, more so a pat on the back for pointing this out and being accurate on it. That is part of my job. Mainstream media needs to, learn that. So, yes, Joe Biden, if you look at the various polling, he's winning pretty handedly, actually. But again, Hillary Clinton was also winning pretty handedly. The only difference here is COVID-19. With all of these people dying, with all of these people on the streets, with all of these evictions that are coming up, you have a lot of people who are desperate, 40 million people out of a job. All of that is Trump's fault. Be honest, he's incompetent. Not just incompetent, unempathetic, meaning he doesn't give a shit. So he's going to get blamed for that. Maybe not as much by Republicans, but he's going to get blamed for that. So he has other stuff on his back that Hillary Clinton didn't have. But look at this number. This number jumps out at me like nobody's business. That number is astonishing. Hold on. Let me get it right. Is your vote for the candidate or against? Now, look at this. Trump supporters. 70% are voting for Trump. For Trump. Yes, I want Trump. I want Trump. 27%. Yeah, fuck Biden. Fuck Biden. Meaning they're against Trump. 27%. How many people are voting for Biden? 37% are voting for Biden. That means Trump doubles that number in levels of enthusiasm. Not just enthusiasm. He only gets 37% that are going to the poll and saying, yes, Biden, yes, I want Biden. I want Biden. 60%. Fuck Trump. 60%. Think about what that means. Think about what that means. Process that for the moment. 70% are enthusiastically going to pull the lever for Donald Trump, with a small percentage that are going to be against Joe Biden, who are so angry and enthused that Joe Biden is running that they're going out against Biden. 37% are only doing that for Biden. Wow! If you're Joe Biden, why doesn't that bother you? This is my point where I'm saying he doesn't care. And the reason he doesn't care, because he knows the second number, that 60% are going because they hate Donald Trump's guts. So when you scream Medicare for all, he can tell you to fuck off, because he knows this. He knows this, that the majority of the people are not going for him anyway. He's a placeholder. I just need you to be there to be against Trump. That's all. I just hate Trump. I just need Trump out of office. Trump bothers me immensely. I need him out. 60%. That number is astonishing. I've made a basic argument over and over again that no one listens to. But this number kind of makes my point, right? This is a problem. I've said over and over again that people who look at elections with this kind of narrow-focused pragmatism, this nearsighted pragmatism, where they look at the very narrow election, missing the point that over the context of time matters. Your political system has behaviors over the context of time. How your politics, it flows, it moves, it doesn't necessarily stay stagnant. And which direction is it going? And which direction do you want it to go? And is what you're doing aiding in it doing that? I mean, think about it for the moment. Blue, no matter who, basically removes any notion of accountability from the process. It doesn't matter. It can have a can of soup with a D on it. It'll pass. Joe Biden can go to Sam Cedar's house, piss in his cornflakes, wait patiently as Sam Cedar and his kid eats it, and then laughs hilariously as he walks out and smells his wife's hair on the way out the door. Sam Cedar would know that and would, in shame, still go and vote for Joe Biden. He's part of that 60%. Year after year after year, you've fallen into the notion of blue no matter who. As money flooded the political space, they took that money and said we can be incrementalists. We can do tiny things just to be least worse than a Republican. It doesn't take anything objective of what it means to be a Democrat. At that point, you're just relative to whatever the Republican Party is. With every incentive in the world to move further and further to the right in order to take that cash and do as little as possible, knowing that people ultimately have nowhere else to go. Meaning, whether you're black, whether you're Hispanic, or whether you're poor. Now, the catch is, a lot of people did leave. When you're looking at the presidential elections, you realize, 50-something% of non-voters are people under $30,000? Meaning the very people who would typically vote Democrat don't. Same thing with people of color. There's a disproportionate share, almost half, that don't vote. Why? Because what they realized was the energy that they put into the voting process was not coming back in material gains as the Democratic Party moved further and further to the right. I mean, think about what Bill Clinton did. Bill Clinton was willing to privatize Social Security, and you still would have had people say, you still got to vote for Bill Clinton, or you still got to vote for Al Gore, or John Kerry, or whoever else. Least worse. Further and further to the right. Any notion of accountability gone from the process. Is there anything that makes you objectively you? Meaning, if you believe in healthcare, where you say, oh God, I believe in healthcare, I don't give a shit what happens, I'm holding on to healthcare, the entire house can burn down, the country can fall apart, but I'm dying on the flag for this. Is there anything? What? If so, if not, then there's nothing that makes you you. You're just relative. You're just a placeholder. You're just a money grabber for, Now, the question is, when does that stop? Look, this number makes it very clear that what I'm saying here is absolutely right. Race to the bottom. When does it stop? Even the selection of Joe Biden itself was not based on policy. It was based on electability. It wasn't an affirmative, yes, I am voting for this person because this person is saying things that I want to hear. No. He lost the policy argument. He won who's more electable. And that's just an issue of relative, normality in the sense of what they consider to be a typical or normal Democrat. Fact of the matter is that typical normal Democrat lost over and over and over again. When is the day of reckoning? When do you get off of this ride? When does this narrow focus pragmatism of, okay, I have to vote for this guy who's least worse. And then in 4 years, I have to vote for this guy who's least worse. And then in 4 years, I got to vote for this guy who's least worse. Where every year you have that number. What does that get you? And if you're a lefty, at what point do you get what you want from the standpoint of policy? You're basically throwing your support in, your lot in, with two parties that in no way believe in what you believe in. And in no way would ever give you what you believe in. You understand that the Democratic Party was so fervent in their wishes that they were willing to throw it to Trump if it meant stopping you. And I know that because the moment that they asked each and every person, are you willing to go to a broker convention? Every person, to the man, to the woman, said, yes, we will take this to a broker convention and rip it out of Sanders' hands if we needed to do that, which each and every one of them also knew they would lose. This number wouldn't have mattered. They would have lost on principle alone. But you're not willing to do that. They tell you you have nowhere else to go. And in the same situation where they were faced with Sanders, in that moment where they thought, oh my God, Sanders was going to run away with it, and we look at them and say, you have nowhere else to go, they say, yes, we can tank this shit into the mountain if that's what we need to do. We're not going to let you take control of the party. That's how fervently they're against you. And yet you throw your lot in with them over and over and over again, falling into this you have nowhere else to go nonsense. Look, truth of the matter is you've lost control of your political instrument. It goes beyond just the party stuff. Whether it's Republican or Democrat, you have lost fundamentally control of your political system. And part and parcel to the reason why is that. Think about what is taking place right now. You have 40 million people out of work. Just as many that don't necessarily have health care. You have an eviction apocalypse that is brewing, is starting, and will basically head into July. On top of that, 110,000 people dead, over 2 million people infected with spikes at the exact same time people are still going back to work. And your political instrument doesn't care. In the middle of a pandemic, with 88% support from Democrats and 70% support from the rest of the country, it fundamentally won the argument. It was tried in the fires of debate over and over and over again for a year. People got sick of the argument. And it came out with 70% support. And Joe Biden said, I would veto it if it magically got across my desk. Nancy Pelosi is putting out Cobra. I'm making the point that your political instrument is not connected to what the public wants in any real tangible way. And part of that reasoning is because it has gotten accustomed to the notion that it can do the blue no matter who nonsense, and people, regardless of what they wanted politically, they would settle for this in order to keep a monster out of office. You realize that year after year, the monster, as it gets worse, meaning Ted Cruz will be next. Tom Cotton, maybe next. Their argument gets that much more pressing of you have nowhere else to go. And the Democrat can also get worse. Obama himself said he's a, 90s Republican. Why? Because the party has moved that far to the right. When you are running against, Ted Cruz in 4 years, and Hillary Clinton decides to run for president again, and the party chooses her, do you vote Clinton? Hell, maybe if you were to tank the ship with McCain. My point is, at some point, you need to be able to stand on some level of principle of saying, look, this is the line to which I'm willing to go. And if you go beyond that point, then you have moved out of my spectrum. And be willing to let it lose. Otherwise, you will continue to have this number in perpetuity, never getting what you want as a public, always having to settle for whatever has a D on it. Okay, here's a ham sandwich. Well, all right, well, it has a D on it, right? It has a D on it. Got to vote for it. Hey, Supreme Court. Ham sandwich is going to put in a good person. It's going to put in a good person. I'll leave it here. I mean, if that number doesn't make that point clear, God knows I don't know what does. People would need to stand on issues of policy and say, look, this is where we are. And there is a red line on this front. Meaning, if the policy is Medicare for all, we are not willing to deviate from this. You either accept it or you don't. And be willing to let them lose. They're not representing the interests of the public. You're basically telling them to do their job. And they're basically saying, we're so ideologically rigid that we don't want to accept a policy that the overwhelming majority of the public supports. And we're willing to lose because of it. That's on them. That's not your fault. That's on them. That's on them. The fact that you have that many people backing you, like 80 something percent, and they're saying kick rocks. That's their loss. It was their choice. And at some point, until you get there, nothing changes. Meaning, all of those people out in the streets right now, the political instrument doesn't care. And in part, they don't care because, again, in their heads, you have nowhere else to go if you're a Democrat. And if you're a Republican, you like Trump anyway. So this is only consternation, really, on the Democratic side. When do you get tired of that? And like, that holds up progress. You have no idea. I understand that Donald Trump is a monster. I get it. Fucking agree. I understand Donald Trump is racist. I've been saying that for years, even when people were like, oh, dude, I don't think he's a racist. No, the guy said Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. That's racist. Calamity and shit that's going on in the public. The best that your government could do when the public said defund the police was, we're going to give them more money. Both branches, meaning the Democrat and the Republican, basically, fuck you. 40 million people out of a job. Just as many people without health care. And your government says, fuck you. I don't care that 88% of you want Medicare for all. I don't care one iota. And with all of that calamity and havoc, the public majority says, get rid of student debt and make colleges and universities free. The rich have done magnificently well. Do something for the public. And your government says, fuck you. How weird is that? I just think that's so weird. Your public wants X. Very clear in their wants. And your politicians say, nah. And then expect you to... I'm just making the point that what the public wants from the standpoint of polling and interest is not reflected in the government device. And what is reflected are the wishes and the wants of the people who are in the upper echelon in the 1%. I'm saying that needs to change. It shouldn't be that way. There shouldn't be a natural bias, and that's not a natural bias. It's not like the universe just kind of flows in this direction. Money does build on itself, but it flows in that direction in part because of policies that allow it to flow in that direction. That needs to change. That needs to change. And we can't do it with blue no matter who. Like, share, subscribe.